With the official end of Title 42, the Trump-era COVID-related immigration policy, which allowed officials to swiftly expel migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border, there's a lot of yelling, there's a lot of finger-pointing, and there's just general outrage peddling going on from both sides of the political aisle about what's really going on at the southern border. Here's Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz speaking to Fox News last night, insisting that the border was about to be overrun as soon as Title 42 expired at midnight.
There are 22,000 illegal immigrants right on the other side of Matamoros. They have fires going, they've had music going, they're partying because in a couple of hours Title 42 is ending and all 22,000 are going to invade this country. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be the last mile of the human trafficking network and take them to every city in America.
So that didn't happen. In fact, the border chief saying earlier this week that the surge already happened in the lead up to the end of Title 42. Today, though, we're still seeing elevated levels of migrants, but not the kind of numbers that Ted Cruz was claiming. But then you have the Democrats, right, on the other side, calling concerns over the border overblown. Take House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on Thursday, specifically taking issue with just how big of a problem there is at the border with illegal immigrants bringing in fentanyl.
So, as is often the case with my extreme MAGA Republican colleagues, they create a fictional argument around what's happening at the border and then actually do nothing to solve the real problem.
And of course, he was roundly criticized by some on the right as saying that the border crisis is a fiction, which of course we know it's not. Over the past week, there have been nearly 68,000 migrant apprehensions at the border. The weekly average from January to March of this year had been just over half that at 38,000, and the daily average of migrant apprehensions over the past week has been 9,679. That's up from a daily average of 6,190 in March. Now, those are big numbers, and we don't really know what's going to happen the next few days. Chances are it could get a lot worse. But my point is that I think that in order for there to be real bipartisan solutions to the problem, there's got to be honesty from both sides about what's really going on. So for a sober, fact-based analysis, let's go right now to NewsNation's border correspondent, Allie Bradley. She's live in Brownsville, Texas tonight. Allie, good to see you. Thanks for coming on. What are you really seeing right now?
Yeah, hi, Jesse. So right now in Brownsville, we are still seeing some people here on the streets. A lot of people are in shelters or they have moved out of the city already. But the reality last night, you're exactly right. We didn't see this huge deluge of migrants storming the border like what we saw in 2019 in Arizona when that migrant caravan rushed the border. So that was what a lot of people expected to happen. And as you mentioned, it really didn't. It was more of a slow, steady trickle. I stood up at the levee and sat there for quite a while after the Title 42 expiration and watched as groups kind of just trickled in, Jesse. So we saw like groups of 5, groups of 10, groups of 15, but we didn't see any massive wave come across. Now, there are a lot of different things that are happening right now because we're seeing people still released onto the streets, right? But they are being released under what DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says are removal proceedings under Title 8. So that is now the premier removal authority that they will be using now that Title 42 has expired. And I think it's important, too, to note that Title 8 has been in place for decades, and it has been in place for the last 2 years, too, Jesse. It just hasn't been the premier removal tool because it takes a little bit longer to process under Title 8 instead of 42. Title 42, an agent might meet up with a migrant, and it can be 90 minutes from meeting until they're back over to Mexico. That's how quick that process can be. Title 8, it's very different. So it takes more time, more resources, and more bed space, too. And, of course, all things that we don't really have.
And, Allie, I know we have to send you off quick, but this ruling from the federal judge in Florida that the migrants couldn't be released without a court date, are you seeing any practical effect of that ruling?
Yeah, so that ruling, a really interesting ruling here on there, Jesse, because that ruling was actually kind of doubled down on. I'll get to that in just a second, but let's start first with the ruling. So basically what happened is there was a leaked memo that came out. That leaked memo was first from Chief Ortiz that basically stated exactly how the parole process would work on a case-by-case basis. But they were saying that they were going to authorize it on mass releases. So they said, no. A judge in Florida said, we're not doing that. So that is pushed aside for 2 weeks. However, The Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, actually doubled down on that, and he too is putting a motion forward for a restraining order to keep Joe Biden from being able to use parole as a tool for mass release. And that is something that was happening. We heard Karine Jean-Pierre say it wasn't, and we know it was happening. We saw 6,000 people paroled yesterday, so we know parole was being used.
It's just shocking to me. We still can't have an honest conversation. I mean, I think you really laid it out. We are somewhere in the middle with this. It's not a massive exodus and overflow, but there's still a substantial problem. Maybe one day we can get to an honest conversation.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.